3. Hi, everybody. Give me 1 second. There we go. How are you, David?
I'm doing good. No problem on the name thing. Chelsea and I were talking before. Literally everybody, including my family, doesn't really know how it's pronounced, so all good.
Well, yeah, sorry about that. But I mean, I'm like pretty much known for mispronouncing things, so like it's just on brand for me. But
Sure.
thank you for coming on. So let's see, you do a lot with like immersive creation and stuff. I don't know if you want to like tell everyone exactly what you do because I feel like you can always put it into your own words better than I can explain it.
Yeah, I'll try. I mean, the reality is the definition of that's changing literally like by the minute, I feel like. But I am a immersive theater, immersive entertainment, theme park creator, writer, creative director side mostly. So kind of starting with the written word, but I've done things in the theme park world and some of this wacky immersive theater stuff that's starting to happen in LA. And the best way to describe it kind of is that at least the immersive theater work really comes from you as an audience member being an active part of the story. So there are experiences that can't happen without you as the audience being the center of the story. And really focus just that nebulous word of immersive is all about just putting you in the middle of the sets, in the middle of with the characters, being very visible. But not all of the experiences are about putting you on the spot. Sometimes they're really about like an escapism where you can fade into the background and check things out. So it's really a pretty wide range.
Yeah, that's really cool too that that's your like set job. What did you go to school for exactly?
So I went to Savannah College of Art and Design in Georgia, and I have a dramatic writing degree. So tr traditionally would be playwriting, but I was like kind of a theme park nerd kid when I was really young. So I wanted to work on the creative side of theme parks, and at the time, nobody really knew what that was, and it was kind of looked at as like, okay, we've got the esteemed schools of theater and film and TV, and then you want to do this weird like rides,
Yeah.
carousels or whatever. And so it was a little bit of an adventure, but now there's actually themed entertainment programs that are pretty well established at SCAD where I went to, and I think FSU has one. There's of course a couple of things out in California, so it's starting to become like more and more understood as a new entertainment and art form.
That's good, especially. Well, I think they said that about everything too, because like even Disneyland, they said it was like a weird concept, or Harry Potter's a weird concept. Like this is just another weird concept, but you're at the ground floor of it, which is really cool. It's working out for you as well. So how did you exactly like get into the immersive field? I know you say that you started like working like at haunts or creations when you were 14. Like was all of this like leading up to like yeah I want to be in this world?
Yeah, I did my first haunted attractions on the East Coast when I was like about 13 or 14. I sort of stumbled upon that whole world and I was really lucky. The very first one I ever did, I went to a local country club in North Carolina and asked if they had any space I could like steal for a month to use for a haunted house, and they gave me their 3,000 square foot maintenance shed.
Wow.
I was cool, totally know what to do with this. So made haunted houses for a while. I was able to like consult in that world a bit and do even some stuff overseas when I was pretty young. And then when I graduated from SCAD, sort of fast forwarding a bunch, I moved down to Orlando, and I was there in Orlando for about 7 years, working at Disney in their creative entertainment group. I started as a ride operator, so like I kind of did the whole thing, but like was an entertainment manager, worked at Disney, did some stuff at Universal in Orlando for Halloween Horror Nights out there for a couple years. And then I moved out to LA 3 years ago, and it was like a golden era of all this new stuff because the Tension Experience, Darren Bausman's show, was just starting. Creep was having its second year. A show called Delusion that some folks on here may or may not be familiar with, that also is like in that sort of fantastical horror immersive walkthrough realm, all were happening. So I just dove in and I struck up a chord with the Creep and JFI people, which is what really got me started, not just going as a guest, but making these things.
That's cool. And like, what exactly did you do for those sides and like Creep and stuff? Was it like more the directing, the writing, or like the creative art side of it? I guess.
Yeah, it's this is where it gets weird because
Yeah.
like in the theme park world, there's these very specific titles of exactly what you do, and the boxes are very constricted. But in immersive theater, it's kind of scrappy, so we're all wearing every hat. So when I'll use the example. The very first thing I ever did with JFI was the Willows, which is a 18-person sort of deconstructed murder mystery dinner in downtown LA, or in the Hancock Park area of LA. And I was part of the initial creative development of it. We just sat, literally, that's just us sitting in a room, knowing what the location we were going into, just coming up with characters and the plot. I sort of, and for that one, developed that with Justin Fix, who's the founder of that company, and Daniel Montgomery, who's the writer, and Fiona Renee, who was also helping out with that particular experience. And yeah, we just sort of wrote it from the ground up as a group. Daniel was the scribe and figured out how to make everybody really talk and do what they needed to do on the page. And then was sort of just a part of us all doing stuff with the rehearsal process. And because, like I said, scrappy, when it was opening time, I was the guy standing on the corner checking people in. Justin, the founder, was the guy driving the van that picked people up and took them to the home, because that was in the early version, you actually got picked up by like a sort of seedy looking van in the middle of a neighborhood and got taken to the Willows home for their dinner. So yeah, we do it all. Clean, there was food, so we were
Yeah.
cleaning dishes too. It's like we're everything from like the writing to like the dish scrubbing is part of the deal.
Wow, that's so cool. And I went through the Willows like just recently, and it was absolutely like so much fun. Like I would go again because there's just so many different tracks, and the acting was so good, and just like the lighting and what you guys can do in just like a small house. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's crazy.
yeah. The hope is it's good that you mentioned the track thing, because that's another part for people who are less familiar, and it derives a lot from like the gaming and interactive worlds too. The sense of being able to come back and see new parts of the story, because when the story breaks apart, of those 18 people who come in as guests, they all see very different things in the space. And there's a also, I always say that for those shows, the finale is really after the show's over, when everybody gets back together and is like, "Oh my God, you did
Yeah.
this! There's a backyard!" Like that whole thing is a big part of it. So that's the fun for us, is letting people kind of game it a little bit as a guest.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's really fun. Um, so like you worked at theme parks and then like just immersive theater and activations. What are the challenges you face for like each one of those, since they seem really different, even though they are in the same world?
Yeah, I mean I was just talking about this with my so this for the show we're working on right now. I Want to Live in Your Mouth. My producing partner and I both kind of live in the like experiential marketing, like brand side a lot during the day. And I think for theme parks and like brand pop-ups at things like E3 or Comic-Con, the biggest thing you have to figure out from a day-to-day basis is it's somebody else's world, somebody else's story. And that story, like I have a sneaking suspicion you're kind of a Walking Dead fan. So as an
Just a bit.
uh, there's a whole world that's already been established there, right? So trying to sensitively make something in that world and have it honor the stories and like what everybody cares about with the characters in that place is a huge challenge. And so in the theme park world, it's a lot about just like it's these big multi-million-dollar projects that take like 5 or 6 years to happen. So there's just so many moving pieces when it comes to the approval side of making it look like it really matches that intellectual property. And the other part is, like I said, it's the 5 or 6 years. It's these things don't versus the immersive theater. These things take some good chunk of your life doing them from the beginning to the end. So you have to really be willing to stick it out. And I would say my ratio of theme park stuff I've worked on that's actually opened or that I can even talk about is probably like one out of, it's probably like 90% of the stuff never sees the light of day, because there are so many
Wow.
pieces that go into it. And that's pretty normal for people in the theme park world, versus immersive theater, where we can come up with a concept and it's not our ideal world, but it's possible for us to turn it around in a couple months and come from like an idea, like the show for Creep, the other part of this company JFI that does the Willows as well. We did a experience called Lore 2 years ago, and it was with Amazon Prime. That whole experience came together in just a couple months, basically, of us figuring out how to do every bit of the going into a locked room and reading all the scripts super fast, and then figuring out how to turn it into a story and actually build it. And so the immediate satisfaction of that was really cool. But it's also just a crazy fast world, so anything can happen at any moment.
Oh my gosh. That sounds so cool though too, because you get to like work both sides. You get industry side where you're sure what's happening, and then one where you just get to be creative. And speaking of that, like I Want to Live in Your Mouth is your own project, right? With you and your partner Eric. Like this is like one you're heading actually. So that must be exciting because you have more probably creative control across that one. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like that project? And it's a little different too, because like where Creep LA has tracks, this one is an alone experience for 20 minutes.
Yes, it is. You enter completely alone. It is a horror experience. So, without giving away too much mystery of it, yeah, it was probably something I started writing about 2.5 years ago. It was always the little wacky, weird side project that got put on the shelf when other stuff was more pressing. So Eric Vosmeier, my producing partner, he and I started working on this in a true effort about a year ago, and it's been really cool it's like our own money and blood, sweat and tears, like passion project thing. And in some ways it does feel a little bit like it's a kind of experience and story I would want to be going through as a guest. And it also actively is a little bit different from, like, in the theme park world, we have to bring a mass population through these spaces. So the stories have to be really easy to understand, fast, kind of get in, get out. And this one was more of a chance to be a little more elliptical and dreamlike. And so it was really an opportunity to do a completely different kind of storytelling while still doing a lot of things that I have learned from the theme park world.
That's so cool. And like, how is it seeing like the audience reception? Is it cool getting to see what people think of like your own show? And like, because I'm sure like when you do theme park stuff, you see like probably millions of people that go there, but you never really get that feedback as a creative artist. So what is that like?
And it's cool too, because it's such a small capacity experience every night, like you're saying, versus thousands of people coming through something where you get to a point where you can't really even track how people feel, because there are just so many people that get churned through these things. With this one, it's 12 to 18 people a night coming through it. So Eric and I really do get a true sense to like see people when they come out disoriented and are like, what the fuck did I just go through? We really get to get an immediate reaction from people. And so that is really cool to get the feedback for our stories, even to the point where like in we had a couple test nights with audiences and just learning how people react to something when you really are the only person there. There's a couple moments in the experience where you do kind of have to figure out what to do next. And that was really illuminating, just seeing how different people's brains work, especially when they're in like a state of like mild anxiety to like blind terror. It's really interesting seeing how people try to move through one of these things. And we get to see the feedback. We have a security camera system where we're sort of watching and making sure everything feels safe and helps track the interactions in the show. And so that really, it's cool to just see even how people handle the moments of it and see the smiles and hear them react to stuff is very rewarding on that small intimate scale.
Wow. And so, like, why a horror experience? Like, why a childhood nightmare? Like, what was about this story that you're like, this is what I want to write. This is what I want like people to experience.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to, so far in a lot of my own personal stuff and the and immersive theater, it does tend to go towards the dark horror side. I mean, I always was like, when I was a theme park person, I was always the Disney's Haunted Mansion kid versus like one of the other attractions. So and I was probably, I think the other thing worth mentioning is even though I make all this stuff now, I was the biggest wimp in America as a kid. So I was afraid. So I'll say like a quick story to that. So to give you an idea of how much of a wimpy kid I was, when I was really young for Halloween, I was so afraid of even wearing a scary or seeing somebody in a scary costume. I also didn't want to wear a scary costume myself because that was just too much. So my mom made me a costume as a flower garden, which was my first Halloween costume that we got pictures of. So I had like lattice work on my shirt and like flowers, which that was my like speed as a kid. And so yeah, a lot of nightmares and childhood imagination stuff came from that I've always held on to, and the show was like a really good chance to bring some of that to light. It just felt natural. I think there are other stories that I want to tell that are in other genres, but it was for the first one to come to bring into the world. It felt like horror was the natural genre.
That's really cool. What do you hope the audience like perception is of? Like, how do you want them to feel coming out? Like confused? Like just that was a cool experience? Is there something like you hope they take from it?
Yeah, the I'm trying to be a little bit like sneaky about it because I'm hoping some folks who are watching will get a chance to come through. But it, it's a little bit more like, I think if there's one thing I can fairly say, it's that I want to see people recapture some of their own childhood and their own uh, either fantasies or nightmares and see some of that stuff get brought to light. Uh, we don't want people to, I think it's fair to say we don't want people to be traumatized by this experience. It's
Yeah.
not, I have been a guest of and have even like partially worked on some shows that are in like the extreme haunted house community. And that's not what this is. So nobody's going to get, waterboarded or have their clothing ripped or get fake blood put on them. So we don't want people to come out, ruined.
Yeah.
But I think it's more about like hopefully they have had just fun and been surprised and felt like we crammed a whole lot of stuff into the show, which is only 20 minutes long, but is pretty dense with stuff and bells and whistles going on.
Yeah. Like, because, like, especially I think in immersive theater shows, it's like, it's going to be the longest and shortest time of your life. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to feel so long, but at the same time, like, when it's done, you're like, wait, it's over? Like, that's
Yeah.
how I felt about the Willows. I was like, that was 2 hours? Like, no.
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, no matter, we're sort of genre agnostic, it's really a chance to play and be a kid again across the board. Like a lot of the experiences that I've worked on before or been to as a guest, it's all about, you know, like even escape rooms, it's like going down slides and crawling up things or hiding from people or like really just, or like, kind of making your own character. That's all part of it. And so that I think lends to why it just speeds by, because hopefully you're so invested in all that stuff that you don't even know the time. And it's a big part of it for us is you also just get to like put your phone away and your technology aside for 20 minutes or an hour or two, and just be in a place with other people, experiencing a story together. So that's a really important part for us because we love our screens and we love all the things they do for us. We also enjoy having a chance to like force ourselves to be separated from all that stuff.
Yeah, it really forces you, like, to sit there and, like, look at your surroundings, like, look at everything that's going on around you.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, for Willows, because I mean, it's structured to feel a little bit like a dinner party at the beginning. And for a lot of people, myself included, I think like some of you want to talk about like the horror and anxiety. Some of the worst of that is, okay, I'm gonna have to like do introductions and sit and
Oh,
make
yeah.
talk with people. Like that's a lot of people's worst nightmare nowadays. And so yeah, that part, it's funny because like when you actually sit and do it, you realize that part of your brain doesn't get used as much anymore, I feel like. So yeah, we enjoy giving people context for that too.
That's why you guys wanted us to feel that pain of having to like.
Right.
There's like,
Yeah.
if you guys like don't know, but I don't know, it's not really a spoiler, but you're sitting at a big table, like with the cast all there, like every other participant, and they're like, okay, you're gonna go around and like say your name and why you're here, and like you can't say I'm here for a show because you're not there for a show, so you have to make up something. And of course, I was sitting like where they made me go first. I was like, great, wonderful.
And you're like, okay, I have to come up with the wittiest, most like
Yeah.
badass response possible. Yeah, no, it's just, yeah, most of these, we're trying not to have it always be this way, but there's an element, it's like social anxiety, the experience. So it's all good. But the thing that we try to do too at that moment is that all the family that's there, the Willows family, is sort of supportive. So no matter what you say, if you're really trying, they'll try and build you up. And nobody's going to be like, oh no, that's not right. That's not part of our story, because that's not really what it's about. They want to make you feel included so that you can buy in and have a good time.
Yeah, and it is really fun. I'm gonna jump over to, we're getting a lot of viewer questions.
Okay.
Flying Bucket wants to know, working with so many big name clients, what was the most memorable project that you have done?
It's tough because a lot of the coolest ones I've done, I can't really. Right now, I'm working with some cool ones that I can't even say who they are, that are like dreams for me. But what I will share that was kind of a fun one is my very first theme park writing gig ever. I did a Hunger Games attraction in Dubai, and so it wasn't so much like I liked the movies, like I wasn't and books and stuff. I wasn't like an uber fan, but the coolest part was like some of my literal first writing I ever did. I got to write lines for Stanley Tucci and Mahershala Ali for that ride, and so that part, like you're like, I hope I don't fuck up meter is really high in your brain, because it was like the first thing I really did for somebody else's big, like, major story. So and also like Elizabeth Banks's character Effie Trinket, like trying to write in the voices of those characters, when you know it's going to be seen by the people who actually literally did write. Like we had, the author of the books and the screenwriters for the movies all looking at the writing intensely, looking to say what's wrong about it. So yeah, that's there's some pressure there. But no, I mean, yeah, it's all been really fun. I also have dug getting the stuff I've gotten to do for the Disney side of the world, which is always under super lock and key how specific I can be. But I've gotten to do some Marvel things and some Disney things that have been really awesome as well. So the like the Marvel side, just as like a pure like comic book nerdy type brain, has been rewarding.
That sounds super cool. And I think Flying Bucket said in the chat, he was just like, because of your bio, and that's not even like all your bio I think I put. It's just like, you've done so much, and that's like really cool of like how much you've accomplished over the years.
Well, you have to try and keep busy. I mean, it's funny, like I've been I have had some places I've been full time, but I've been a freelancer, and so part of the cool thing, the cool part and the scary part about being a freelancer is you have to keep propelling and moving forward and finding new things. So what's nice about it is, right now I'm in sort of a transitional period between, there's some projects that are finishing and a whole bunch of new stuff coming. So it's a chance to like be part of new stories, jump into new challenges. So that part is very, it makes every day a little different.
Oh, that's really cool. Blue Strike wants to know, what was your biggest creative challenge that you've had to face?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to just how to pull off, like this show has probably been the biggest amount of challenge for me, just because it literally involved cold hard cash and trying to put it be like myself, like my name on the project. In somebody else's thing, if it doesn't pan out or if people don't respond to it, it's like, oh well, I mean, you could, I guess I don't really do this, but you could be like, oh, that was that other guy that like came up with that idea. It's totally cool. Like, there's no hiding right now. If people don't dig this thing, it's very obvious that it's mine. And this show in general has probably been one of the biggest creative challenges, just because we brought a whole bunch of new things in. There's elements of the show physically, mechanically, technically that are probably more complicated than most solo person experiences before. And there's also the puppetry element involving that was a whole new thing for me. So yeah, it was just a lot of weird technology and things that I put my own real live money into, not knowing how it would turn out. So it's been really rewarding and relieving seeing people come through and not hate it.
Yeah, that's good. So like, yeah, you guys have been in your run about like a month now, I would say, and the
Yeah,
feedback's been pretty good.
yeah, we're finishing up our third week, or we're in our third week now. Yeah, we had previews and opening weekend, and it's 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 cool to see such a wide range of people come through because we've had people who like are the hardcore extreme haunted house fans who see the name and the mystery of what it is and think it's going to be like a very visceral experience, which we try to have it be on some level, but they find things they're not expecting in a cool way. We've had we had a guest sign up his mom, who is a lecturer who has never done anything like this before, and she came through and was very, like, it's been interesting seeing like professors and lecturers and people who don't do this stuff a lot get put through our weird little horror thing and take away different stuff. So yeah, like you said, it's the instantaneous feedback is like the full spectrum of the good, the bad, and the ugly about theater in general, not just
Yeah.
immersive theater.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's like rewarding as a creator though, that like you actually get some of that. P. Kaler wants to know, how did David go from wearing a Flower Garden shirt to attending a heretic show? Did he feel accomplished after surviving it?
I just tried not to think about it when I was going into Heretic. I don't know. Yeah, my I'm at I like I said, I kind of go into everything with a constant state of anxiety and worry, and that's my natural base as a human being.
Yeah.
So same thing for like a roller coaster. Every time I'm about to do one of these things, I'm like, I don't need to be doing this. Why am I doing this? But then I go ahead and do it and have a good time. And so like I've done at this point 4 or 5 extreme haunted houses, and every time I'm like about to say I'm just gonna go home and couch and watch TV where it's safe in my safe place.
Yeah.
But I the very first Heretic, I think I benefited from not really knowing exactly what I was getting into. It was a Philip K. Dick themed piece called Riot Violence, and I think what I came away with that surprised me was the storytelling. A lot of it is, without our current show being an extreme show, I just learned a lot from the single person, because heretic shows are almost always like one person going through as well. Most of the extreme haunted houses are like that, and just getting to see how cinematic it felt, like you were the camera, you're being put through these various scenarios in very creative ways. So that was a big inspiration, and ultimately, like, that's the part I try and remember every time I'm in, like, about to go into another one of these things and I'm like freaking myself out, is like it's going to be inspirational and there's cool creative stuff happening, but I'm still that flower garden kid on the inside.
Yeah, the flower kid is just, he's going out and testing other gardens.
Right. Yeah. It's exactly. It's to encourage all the other gardens to get out there and try something new. Because, yeah, this stuff is worth it for people who aren't sure what it's going to be like. I think that no matter what, you'll take something away from it. And just in general, being like a creative person, it's been my like goal. I've gotten a whole lot more into the indie game world. I've gotten a whole lot more into a bunch of different fields that I have been a little less tapped into recently, just to stay aware of what's going on. Because I think it all feeds, like, if people who are watching are in any creative endeavor, you'll find something from like the immersive theater world that will feed what you do right now.
Wow. That's amazing though. Like, good job. Like, 4 shows though. Like, good job, fam. Let me see. Okay, we have one from Chimney Cricket. He says, "How long does it take to write an entire show? How long does it varies by?" Wait, I know it varies by quite a bit, about like, how much. A couple months, a couple years.
Yeah, none of the shows. There's one I have done not too long ago on like the more the theme park side, where the writing it happens quickly, but it's the rewriting and the revisions and the expanding on it that takes a long time.
Mm.
I've had scripts that, I mean, are, I guess, technically still not even finished yet, but like that I worked on for theme park projects that took a couple months to like go through, but the actual like treatment, writing like the short brief for it originally would happen in like a day or two. I mean, I've always been a pretty fast writer. I think you kind of have to be in our field. Like when I used to write plays, I would just sort of the ideas would just build up in my head, and I would just sit down and binge write something for like a day or two, and get a like a full length play done in like a day or two.
Wow.
But yeah, some of the stuff, the really crazy ones, like still happen fast. Like there's a group I work with in the theme park world and the activation world called MYCOTOO that are based in Pasadena out here, and they do experiential like brand activations, like they did Westworld for South by Southwest a year ago, and some change, I guess now, and those shows are crazy because it's to give you there's one I can't really say what it was for, but it was an entire evening event where we had entertainment scripted for every 5 minutes in every room of a space for the entire night, and so the script ended up being like almost 1,000 pages long.
Oh my gosh.
Huge. They're like group efforts, but we crank them out quick. Like with the brand world and like all and even like the immersive theater world, you just have to. The stuff is there's never enough time to get it done. So yeah, I guess the answer is it does vary pretty widely. This show, I Want to Live in Your Mouth, I probably wrote the initial script for it in one sitting, in like a couple hours, but it's evolved quite a bit. Like some major parts that are a lot of people's favorites so far actually came out like a year later as like bits and pieces. So it's a very scattered process in some way.
Yeah, and just like looking at the show too, and looking at like everyone who's on board with it, it's a very big production that just like, I guess, went from your script to like this whole other thing, which has like a bunch of hands on it, which I'm sure helps the show grow in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and I also, I'll give like a quick shout out to just like, I mean, obviously like Eric was the one who really helped me figure out how to make it a real thing. But we have a technical director, David Maurer, and like Corwin Evans, who was our audio, and Amanda, who was our lighting, who all like figured out how to, and April Metcalf, who did the costumes, has just made this world that was sitting in my head sort of somewhat fleshed out, but not entirely. And then just to have cast and crew, like the puppeteering lead that we have, Rachel Burson, all our cast, like really bring it to life has been super cool, just because I truly could not do it without them. And there's that part does not escape my mind at any second.
I'm glad you had that team helping you. It sounds like you're really passionate about it too, and it seems like obviously you must be really good at what you do if you've worked on all these other projects. But I know you're a fan of haunts and like extreme haunts. How has being a fan of immersive theater like influenced you as a immersive creator?
Well, I think one thing that's helped is I'm very bad at understanding instructions and how to like just interact with the world, generally speaking. So like I'm a pretty a good guest in the sense of like whenever I go through stuff, I get a pretty good sense of not just the surprise of it, but also reminders of things that a person who's never been in your experience before might be confused by. So like I learned a lot from that, but I pick up little pieces of stuff all the time. The things that I've lately gotten most interested in are engaging other senses than just sight and sound, like figuring out ways to bring in scent more and touch. Like immersive theater is very tactile, so really remembering like whenever I go to something new and I get surprised by the way something smells or feels, it triggers that part of my mind to like start considering stuff in that world too.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I can totally see that, especially with activations, which I think people don't really realize that when they're going through them, and that they're like they love these, that they're going through like a mini immersive theater experience.
Hmm.
So like people are so confused when I explain it, but I'm just like, if you go to San Diego Comic-Con, people are waiting hours and hours and like camping out in line sometimes to do the big ones. Like I heard of Westworld at
Yeah.
Comic-Con. Like people were like camping out there just to go through this experience, which is crazy
Yeah.
that you create too, because it must be like a lot of parts you have to think about, not just like person looking at the screen, but like what's going on around them.
Yeah, well, and you also, I mean, it's tough because so like one thing that you and I talked about before this started was I worked on a Fallout with MYCOTOO, a Fallout 76 activation for E3, and that was really it there was a line develops for something like that for sure, and so you want to figure out how to like honor the time that people are in there, don't feel like they're being rushed through something, but you also have to be cognizant of the fact that it's a big crazy show floor and there's a lot of stuff happening. So you want to somehow manage to give people a few minutes to feel like they're just alone with that story and really connected to it before you like have to by necessity like rush them out the door, person in, so that the line is not 20 hours long.
That's cool. Looking at E3, are you like a video game fan? Did you have to learn about Fallout, or were you like a fan of it before?
I had done a little. I was not I was not super deep into Fallout, but I had played the games before. Yeah, there's a lot of video game properties have had more and more activations lately now than ever before, and so I've been really having to bone up on the different systems and games. I also found a huge amount of um, inspiration mechanically from I like probably a lot of people discovered around the same time like Braid and Fez and some of those like the games that are more on the indie side too, and just the mechanics of those were valuable to me. So I'm kind of I try to be um, more like just slightly above a casual gamer so that I can really be aware because there's so many lessons that the two forums share with each other.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, I guess, like, what's it called? I would say, like, Telltale games, especially, like, where you are choosing your own venture. It's, like, immersive in that way, or, like, Doki Doki, or
Right.
different things like that.
Yeah. And with like Fallout, I mean it's super daunting because at like E3, you're never going to know. You have to try to make it look like as much as the biggest fan of Fallout, which is physically impossible. So we had to train our cast to be ready to truthfully answer questions that are within the Fallout universe, and be like there are definitely people who we knew were going to come by, and they sure did, that were like the sort of stumper questions. So you
Yeah.
have to know enough to really pull it off and get the like fan. What you always want to seek, and we're most proud of, is like when you get that like fan. Okay, yeah, they get my story, because yeah, you don't want to disrespect what people are waiting hours in line for when it's their like favorite type of game or their favorite movie or comic.
For sure. Halloween Horror Nights they had a From Dusk Till Dawn, maze. And they
Yeah.
had the Richie and Seth Gecko outside there. And, like, I would just ask some questions about the show, like,
Hmm.
just to see if they knew, because I was a really big fan.
Yeah.
And luckily they were able to answer all of them. But I totally understand. Like, if I'm going through a Walking Dead thing, you best bet, like, it's all Walking Dead thing.
Yeah, yeah, no, we have to come armed, and it's like and the fans are, even because of the advent of the internet being so much like a resource for everyone. You have to be even more on top of things when it comes to fielding fan questions. But there are some universes of shows or games where the characters in that world honestly wouldn't have any idea what you're talking about. So that's the other trick too, is when somebody asks you a question about something really in depth in that world, sometimes you have to be like, wait a second, I don't know what that is, and play that off
Yeah.
in a very factual, authentic feeling way.
Yeah. So there are, like, a lot of challenges, especially I think when you're dealing with, big branded ones.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Um, we have a couple more questions from viewers, if that's okay, if you have enough time.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally fine.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. Downgrade Gamer wants to know, how did you come up with the name for I Want to Live in Your Mouth?
So the name, a lot of people are curious about the name. It came from, well, I wrote the piece first before I named it. And there's there's elements of the show where the name just makes sense for it. The other part that's sort of been a long time influence for me with it is there's a Harlan Ellison short story called "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream," which is about it's actually not that sounds super horror based, but it's actually like based on AI and robots and the just the sort of I felt like there was like a really interesting thing about making a title that was a full sentence or like a phrase rather than just being a word or two. Like I had just sort of been working on a lot of shows where one of two things kind of happens nowadays in like the naming world. There's either like a name that's like super short, like Hysteria or like, or Darkness or something. Yeah. And then there's also in the theme park world, there's like a very big thing now with like the name and then like a colon and like the adventures of blah blah blah. So like trying to do something different and have like a sentence be the title just felt interesting to do, and we definitely wanted people to just feel weird about it, and that's been successful. We also have had a lot of very interesting. We have a big sign for it out on the street now, and getting reactions from people who have no idea what it is. We get every joke you can imagine, basically.
Oh no! Well, I mean, it is North Hollywood.
It's all right. We knew this was we knew this was going to happen when we named it. It's all part of it. Whatever. As far as I'm concerned, the thing that is valuable about the name is whatever will get people curious is a win in our book, even if they think it's going to be maybe something different than what it actually is.
Yeah, no, and it gets people talking. And to me, it reminds me of like old pop punk days with like Panic at the Disco or Fall Out Boy. Their like song titles were always sentences.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I like that. I don't know. There should be more of that, I guess. Yeah. I don't want it to be like the next new fad, but I dig long titles.
Yeah, it makes you different. Bikayla wants to know, what would you recommend to someone looking to enter the immersive horror realm but is nervous to do so or doesn't understand where to start?
Well, if that viewer is in California, there's a lot of options. It's tougher in some other parts of the country right now. There's just not as much stuff around. But I mean, during the Halloween season, there are a lot of options. I think, our show, even though it's a single person experience, isn't really meant to be super terrifying. But I understand why some people might not be down to do the whole like one person thing right out the gate. So I can't predict the future of what's going to be in town, but there's some like if a delusion was to come back, for example, that this past year they did a show called The Blue Blade that was more Raiders of the Lost Ark almost feeling, that had like horror elements, but it was more of like an adventure experience. So that's a good way to get into stuff. I also think there are some really cool horror escape rooms that are up year round, and that's like kind of a way to do something that's pretty much immersive horror, but just in a different context, and you're with a group, so that's helpful usually if you're nervous about that part. I also think just in general, like there's one of the things that was my gateway into all this was a podcast called No Proscenium that is about immersive theater that's now at this point focused on, they have like a newsletter and stuff for all over the world at this point. And there's a lot of experiences that are sort of hybrids of horror and other genres. So you can totally find something that's happening soon that is in maybe fantasy or sci-fi or other fields, and at least see if it's your thing or not before you go into more the horror side, if depending on your interest in being like scared during one of these things.
Yeah, for sure. And like to E-Rock right now, like so basically you're not paying for a personal scare. I think like especially like your show and what you're doing, I think they get a little confused. Like when you pay for it, you're not paying for a personal scare. Even I think like an extreme haunt, like you're not paying for a personal scare. You're paying for like an experience, and like it's more of a story based.
Yeah. Well, there's no, I mean, it depends on the show. There are some that are more about like the true scare part. Ours is definitely more about atmosphere and dread. And like, I'm a big believer on a lot of our stuff happens in the periphery, or it's like the tricks you play on yourself, your own mind. Like the only person so far for our experience who there is a safe word and there's an ability to leave early, and we've only had one person so far leave early, and it was in the very first room because they sort of their own brain was what played the trick on them. So we believe that there's nothing that we can come up with that's scarier than what is in your own imagination. So the show is more about like preying on that than actually just having jump scares. Not that I have a problem with jump scares, but yeah, it's definitely more about cultivating an atmosphere than all out scaring you.
Totally. And it seems like everyone loves it. I don't know, from like reactions I see, everyone's just like, it's an amazing show. There's puppets. Like, how does that not sell you?
Puppets, it never hurts to get some puppets in there for sure.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if that is the scariest part. Like, I don't
Right.
know.
Well, yeah, it depends on your exactly. I mean, there are some people who there was one person who's a friend of mine that heard about it, and when they heard there were puppets, they're like, "No, I don't do puppets. I'm not interested." Like that, it's like clowns for some people. Like that can just be a gut. No, thank you. Which I definitely get, but I don't know. We'll see how our puppets are. I think you'll be maybe seeing soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Part or not.
I have one other thing I wanted to touch on a little bit. You said you do consultations, like for
Mm-hmm.
you've done consultations for like extreme haunts and like other people and stuff. How does that exactly work? Like, just like giving them advice like on your own career and like what's happened, or just like giving them of what like the statistics show that is best.
Yeah, it's different every time. I mean, it's a very like umbrella type word that can mean a lot of different things. So, I've been brought in when somebody's like, I want to try and figure out how to add a more theatrical element to my experience, or like come take a look at the script and give me thoughts, or sit in the room. I mean, the Willows, that my first time I ever did anything with JFI Productions, it was as a consultant to them because it was just like, okay, they knew I knew a little bit about the theme park world, and they were curious to see what it would be like to have somebody from that mindset and skill set in their creative sessions. But now it's gotten funny because the opposite is starting to happen. I'm starting to get approached by like the Disneys of the world that know about the immersive theater stuff and want me to come sit in the creative sessions so that I can bring what I know about immersive theater to theme parks. So it can really depend. It's all about it's a case by case basis thing. I try and help people with anything from more the business side of how to make something like this make sense, all the way up to character development, or even just creative script editing. It's one of the cool parts of my career, in that it's always different again, like day to day.
Wow, that's really amazing too that you're able to do what you love and do what you wanted to do. Like, I don't know, it's always really cool to see and really inspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you're able to do all that, and you're so nice and willing to talk about it too.
Yeah, I mean, I end up speaking a lot at like I'll every once in a while I do lectures at like USC or like Cal Arts, and talk to them about a little bit of the immersive theater world if they've never seen it before, don't know what it is, or even just like how to be a freelancer in this business, down to like how to handle tax stuff, and how to handle the part that is never my favorite part, but like the business
Yeah.
side of being a freelancer, which is the scariest thing of all. And so yeah, but it's this show now is truly like feels like the fruition of all that stuff, of this really making the experience that I would want to see as a guest myself, of like that fantasy and imagination for one person with the creatures, and just really putting people into a traditional horror tale.
Yeah, that's really great. I do have one question for you, like before we wrap it up and go. This is just like a personal question I have to know. I ask every guest this. If you could bring one superhero with you into the zombie apocalypse, who would it be?
Mm. I did not study up on this, so I have to think about it for a second.
No, it's okay. It's a really like thoughtful question. I need a why. I need everything.
No, of course, of course. My girlfriend's gonna kill me, but I feel like you need a little bit of magic in this, so I would say Doctor Strange, and I'm not quite sure why. I just think that would be the most, you'd get the most unusual things thrown at the zombies, and it doesn't hurt to be able to warp some of reality when it's convenient. So, but I'm going to be thinking about this for the rest of the day, because yeah, there's so many great. I'm looking across right now as we're talking at my like giant Animal Man omnibus, and I'm like thinking about other superheroes that would do this. So
No,
that's my decision for today, Doctor Strange.
I totally agree, because that's my decision too. Because I'm like, if there's a zombie, open a portal, go to another place or put the zombies in there. Like,
Yeah, exactly. It's like a very fight or flight option. So yeah, it's good.
oh my gosh, that's amazing. Um, so right now you guys can go to like Instagram and then Facebook, right, to follow your show. I Want to Live in Your Mouth. I don't know if you have anywhere like personally you want to say people follow you, or if they just follow you there.
Um, the best ways are either on the Instagram for I want to live in. It's just the whole big long title. I want to live in your mouth, or the Facebook. The Facebook. Actually, either one will take you straight to the ticket site. We right now have tickets available through May 5th, and the show is in North Hollywood at Zombie Joe's Underground Theater. That's the venue for it. So we've got, don't be intimidated by the sold out slots. There's definitely still some spots around there. You just have to, it's tricky looking because since it's single guest shows, you'll like look at it and it'll be like all this sold out, but there's definitely tickets available. So yeah, check it out. Should be fun.
That's really great. Thank you for coming on and talking to us and telling us about your career and who you are. It was really, really fun, and everyone really enjoyed it.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you. Guys, check out his stuff. I'll say goodbye to chat, and then I'll talk to you. But thank you guys so much for coming and watching the interview. I really do appreciate it, and thank you, David, again. Like, it really means a lot to us that you come and take your time out and talk to us on Twitch.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.